Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford Dealers and F Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years, and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Tom Caron, along with Alex Speier. Last week we were still coming around from the elimination of the Red Sox. Now this week, at least, Red Sox fans are taking a little solace in the elimination of the New York Yankees from the playoffs. Yankee Elimination Day is always a big day, Alex, and that came last week at the hands of the Toronto Blue Jays. One thing that I found interesting, right? Much like what happened to the Red Sox in the 3-game series against the Yankees, against the Blue Jays, a lot of these innings are precipitated by an error or a misplay or a fundamental lapse that opens the door and leads to trouble. Buck Martinez said the Yankees are not a good team. He was proven right in the end, but it is... so much of it comes back to fundamentals. I know we talk a lot about home runs, and that's what leads you to wins in the postseason, but fundamental mistakes often open the door for the other team to get those home runs.
Well, put another way, it's really hard to get hits in the postseason, right? And it's really hard to stack hits in the postseason. And so when you do, you're creating opportunities that might not otherwise exist when you have misplays. And so that reduces the degree of difficulty that faces an offense when another team is giving things away, whether it's the leadoff walks or the two out walks to the bottom of the order, or those misplays. It's all damaging in a scenario where opposing pitching is going to be elite.
That's one thing the Red Sox are going to have to improve on, league leading errors. We'll ask Craig Breslow about that. In fact, let's get right to it. Great conversation today. We've got Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow in that little slice of time between the end and the beginning of next year, where he's already at work putting together that next team, but waiting for some decisions from players and whatnot. Let's ask the questions of Craig Breslow, Chief Baseball Officer, on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford Dealers. Craig Breslow joining us on the show. And Brez, I'm in Maine, and I woke up this morning and the wind chill was 31. So the sort of the hot stove seemed very far off a couple of days ago when it was 80 degrees, and now we're into it. But I want to ask you, do you give yourself a period of decompression, or is it dive right in and now we're working? Because it does come upon you fast, doesn't it?
It does. It comes quickly. I try to give myself at least a day or two to decompress and process a little bit, just because the raw emotion of the end of the season, especially getting ousted from the playoffs, is so strong that I don't think it's great for making decisions. So trying to take a little bit of a step back, spend a little bit more time with the family, I think is better for everyone.
Although I do want to say, you aren't great at stepping back, right? If you think about, last offseason, Fried ends up signing with the Yankees. You pull an all-nighter in order to sign Garrett Crochet. This year, you have the trade deadline, and 24 hours later, you're deep in talks with Roman Anthony about a long-term deal. Do you find that you are someone who, after an ending that you don't want, after an outcome that's not the one that you sought, are you someone who's okay, I need to do something in order to pivot?
That is my immediate reaction. It's not always the best response to something that doesn't go your way, but I do think that there are only a handful of ways to really leverage an advantage over the rest of the industry, and there are it's incredibly competitive people in baseball operations across Major League Baseball. One way is to be, act more quickly, to act more urgently, to act more decisively, and that's something that we need to strive to do.
So as we continue our psychological profile of Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow, this is a weird time, Brez, right? I mean, there are opt-outs that you have to wait for, and I'm sure you have a pretty good, idea of where things will go. You have multiple plans, obviously, but for this little slice of time, it is a little bit out of your hands, right? The building can't begin until you know exactly what is still part of the foundation.
Yeah, that's true. And, obviously guys like Alex and Trevor, they have opt-outs built into their contract, and we respect that. At the same time, so much of the offseason is building contingencies and alternatives and identifying your pivot points. So from that respect, or through that lens, like, we're constantly mapping out, a bunch of different paths to improving the team. It's a lot like a choose your own adventure book, right? And as one decision is made, lead you down a little bit different path, and you try to kind of acquire as much information you can about all options, make the best that you can, and know that nobody walks out of an off season having executed perfectly the plan that they anticipated executing in the middle of October.
We talked to Alex Cora the other day, and we asked him about, when someone is in that process of deciding an opt out. Well, how do you have you given them their space? Do you wait now? Is it a check in? Like, what's the process when you've got somebody got that 2-3 week period where you're waiting them?
Yeah, I think what we try to do is we try to build relationships with all of our players. I think that has very little to do with trying to influence an opt-out decision, and everything to do with ensuring that there is trust and communication, so that we can bounce ideas off of each other. We can take steps forward collectively. We can increase our accountability. And then, at this time, I think what's important is that our players know exactly how we feel about them. We understand what their experience in Boston has been. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the players and their families to make the decision that feels right to them.
3:10 to left is presented by your New England Ford dealers, who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 3:10 to left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
What's changed, if anything, about how you view the outfield situation? And I suppose we can count the four everyday guys, with Roman Anthony, as well as Abreu, Duran, Rafaela, and Ben Yoshida as well, since July.
Yeah, I think a couple things have become evident. One is our depth was certainly tested. There was a period when Willie was on the IL and Roman was on the IL, and what was seemingly viewed as a surplus, kind of very quickly became thin. Fortunately, we had depth, and we had guys that were able to step in. Massa played, some outfield. Ref did a really nice job for us all season long. And I understand there's like a level of kind of seemingly being passive, if you were to say these things tend to take care of themselves. But at the same time, it's never a good idea to go into a season thinking that you will only need 3 everyday outfielders, 5 starters. We know from having lived this that guys get hurt, guys struggle, and so we want to both try to improve our kind of top end talent on our major league roster, and also continue to build depth, knowing that we're going to need to call on it.
I think last offseason you talked about the idea of finding areas of surplus and using them to address other parts of the roster potentially, right? Like you've been active in terms of using trades to balance out what you saw, kind of level out the different areas of strength versus weakness in the organization. You have a unique circumstance when it comes to having 4 outfielders that have at least 3 years of team control, plus Justinson Garcia on the horizon. Do you feel like this is an area that you're likely to be receiving calls on as the offseason begins?
I imagine the rest of the industry recognizes that we have very good, very talented, controllable players. That's a really good thing to have from my position. We're in no rush to diminish that. What we have to do is put together a roster that we believe gives us the best chance to once again compete for a division title and to make a deep postseason run. And that means we have to put everything on the table. At this point, we can't say we would not consider trading from a particular position. But I do think, what we have done over the last probably 12 months or so is start to build out a deeper pipeline of pitching talent. So I think that we saw toward the end of the season a number of guys come up and contribute, and I think there are more on the way, and we'll have to figure out exactly how that shakes out. But being able to level the position player versus pitching talent in the organization was certainly a priority.
And you've done such a good job building up that organizational depth on the pitching side, Brez. But we saw once again, and I'm not breaking any news here, that major league depth can whittle away quickly on the pitching side. Right, by the time you get to that playoff series, once the news of Giolito comes out, suddenly the depth you probably felt really good about a month earlier was put to the test. How important is it to address that? And we talked a lot about top end pitching help in that rotation prior to last year, right? You went out and got Crochet. Are you still looking to bolster the upper end, the top end of that rotation?
Well, I think to answer your first question first, we leaned heavily on the pitching depth that we had that we had built out over the last 12 to 24 months via the draft, via some trades. And we weren't the only team that needed to do that, right? We can look at the Yankees and Blue Jays both throwing rookie starting pitchers in the postseason. And so we should feel good about the steps forward that group has made. But at the same time, losing pitching in particular can be so destabilizing to the rest of the team that there is absolutely no such thing as having a pitching surplus or having too much pitching. Now, I think what we need to do and what we'll do over the course of the offseason is take a step back and really recognize what type of potential pitching additions or acquisitions really move the needle for us, because we do have, what I would suggest is a strong group of pitching depth. And so we want to make sure that any additions that we make actually improve our team. And, I think you can say, hey, we've got to add someone at the front of the rotation, or, if there was significantly less depth, we would say we need to just amass depth because of the things like injury and attrition that wear that down. Where we don't want to find ourselves is having to address both. And I don't think that's the case right now.
It's interesting in all these conversations, like obviously Crochet profiled, you required him to be a number one, and he was that and more, right? Like he was almost very close to being a one of one if you were to take a pool of all pitchers. So that has to be, incredibly satisfying. But, behind that, there's this question about, I guess about whether or not you do need a number two. And part of that relates to what's Brayan Bello? It was such an interesting year for him because the effectiveness over an extended period of time was super high. At the same time, you've seen kind of regression in some of the swing and miss rates. It's been a little bit within an overall very strong performance. There was some up and down there. What are the priorities for Brayan Bello this offseason, and what do you think he can be for the 2026 Red Sox?
Yeah, so he absolutely pitched for stretches like a number two. There were also some inconsistencies. I think we know he's going to work really hard this offseason. He comes into camp bigger and stronger every single year. I think the workload that he shouldered this year is significant, and it will be valuable as he thinks about preparing for 2026. But if we really drill down, there was some inconsistency in terms of performance, and particularly swing and miss versus left. There was, times where the changeup seemed to have kind of disappeared from the repertoire, struggled to get his sweeper in zone, and he developed a cutter kind of midway through the season. It ended up being a really good pitch for him, but regressed a bit toward the end of the season. So he's got all of the tools and all of the makings, and he's got a great mentality and work ethic. So I think the challenge in front of all of us is to get the consistent performance so that we look back and we say he pitched like a number two all season long.
Going back even to the beginning of last year, Brez, it's a reminder that you can't take anything for granted, right? You would have assumed that Tanner Houck was going to have a top three rotation type year. He struggles early. The injury, you end up losing him. Cutter Crawford is the kind of depth 4-5 guy that any organization would love. He's injured. You don't get anything on him. Where do those guys factor in right now? How certain are you of their status? Where do things stand with Houck and Crawford?
Sure. With Tanner, the timeline, the recovery for Tommy John surgery is pretty well documented, roughly in the 12 to 14 month range. So, that's what we would expect. And it's hard to know exactly what the impact of an injury is on performance. We were all kind of trying to we were all banging our heads against the wall, trying to figure out what we could do to help Tanner, including Tanner. And it wasn't until we had the complete picture and recognized that there was a significant injury here, and that has an effect on performance. So, fully expect Tanner to do all the work to come back strong and healthy and to perform like he did in the first half last year. And then certainly a tough year for Cutter in that, a little bit delayed based on the knee and then obviously the wrist. And so, it ended up being a lost year, but we also saw glimpses of Cutter being a very, very successful major league pitcher. And, to your point, the type of guy that every team is excited to run out there in their rotation, especially just given the really unique kind of release and profile of his fastball. And we've seen that as a pitch, especially when it's 93 to 95 as one that gets a ton of swing and miss because of the carry that it has.
310 to Left is presented by your New England Ford dealers who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 310 to Left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
How much do you feel like in order to be, in order to compete at the top in the AL East, in order to be a team that's able to make a deep October run, you need to add someone who reliably can just drive the ball out of the park?
Sure. It's a great question. It's one that I think everybody in the game thinks about, in that you can absolutely make the argument baseball is a zero-sum game, and preventing runs is equally valuable to scoring runs, and scoring runs it doesn't really matter how you score them. If it's getting on base a ton and kind of sequencing back-to-back hits, if it's running into a ball and hitting it out of the park. But the reality is, in the postseason, it's different in that every night you're facing an opponent's best starting pitcher, best relievers, and it's just incredibly difficult to go out there and string together hit after hit after hit. And so a disproportionate number of runs are scored via the home run. And, I think that there are a number of ways to kind of get to that power, and certainly will be open-minded about all of the opportunities to improve the team, whether that is looking at external acquisitions, whether that is some of the development of our internal group, and probably to some degree it's going to be guys getting and staying healthy. We have not had a full season of Roman. We haven't had a full season of Willie, and those are guys that have shown they can hit the ball out of the park.
The floor changes when you have a guy who hasn't played in that long. How tricky is that to navigate what you believe a player's ceiling is versus kind of not having a great deal of clarity about A, whether or not he'll be available, and B, what a lot of time off is going to do to his offensive profile?
That's exactly right. I don't think the upside, I don't think the true talent has changed. What we've got to figure out is the best way to access that. And it's going to start with getting and keeping Tristan on the field. The last two seasons obviously have been significantly interrupted by injury. And we can look at the profile. He's obviously a big, strong guy who swings the bat really fast and can hit the ball really hard. He doesn't really chase out of the zone. He can get on base via the walk, and he can also do damage. It's exactly the profile that you want. What we've struggled to do is kind of keep him on the field. And so he's making a ton of progress this offseason, but it's a significant injury, and we've got to be realistic about what fair expectations are for him.
Defensively, obviously the top of the list of errors, and that's a few years running now where the error total has been up. I think everybody felt better about what they saw defensively from this team and a lot of other metrics, yet it is clearly something that fundamentally needs to be addressed. As you once again go into the offseason, start to look at systems and what you can do, is it more about bringing in players who will help that? Is it more about maybe tweaking some things with this group? How do you get this group to be or to take another step forward fundamentally?
Sure, it's all of those things, right? It's it's personnel, it's training methods, it's prioritizing what's important, and errors are a meaningful measure of kind of defensive competence, right? And I think we understand they don't tell the whole story, but they certainly tell a story. And most intuitive is the reality that there was a chance to convert an out that wasn't made, and those outs can come back to really bite you. And I think what our defensive performance over the last 2 seasons has done is force us to look at how we're training this in the minor leagues and what we're prioritizing and focusing on. And we've made some changes to the methods that we're employing, and we've seen some improvement through the minor leagues. But this will take time. And I think we can talk about the number of errors, but we should also talk about, an outfield defense that was really, really good, arguably the best outfield defense in baseball. And, the left side of our infield was generally very steady. Certainly, Alex early on in the season had some errors, particularly throwing errors, and Trevor had a couple later in the season, but both of those guys were very, very solid for us. I think where some of our defensive lapses or deficiencies came were on the right side of the infield and actually also on the mound, ironically enough. And those to me are just things that we need to continue to hammer and drill, starting in spring training.
Are you engaged in any kind of turning of the dials? How different does the start of this offseason feel as an exercise versus where you were a year ago?
Sure. So the overarching sentiment is we're still not where we want to go. I think you could argue we took a step forward, which means we're closer. But I said it the other day in the end of the season wrap up. I think there's real danger in thinking that because we took a step forward from 24 to 25, if we just roll this back, we'll take another step forward coming out of 25 and heading into 26. We need to look for ways to improve the team, and we have to put all of the options in front of us, those being looking at free agency and external additions via free agency, looking at trade opportunities, looking at some of the minor transactions like minor league trades, waiver claims, and then also continue to push the development of our players internally. I think it gets more and more difficult to take that next step the closer you get to where you want to go. But it's incredibly important, right? Like the value of winning, a handful more games could be the difference between, winning the division or not, and giving yourself a legitimate chance to get deep into the postseason. So the goal hasn't changed. I think we're going to have to look for opportunities to improve the team, and it may come with a little different flavor than what we did last year. But our entire office is committed to doing everything that we can to improve our roster. And I know that our coaches are committed to doing everything that they can to helping our players take another step forward. And our players who got a taste of what it's like to play, meaningful baseball in September in Boston and play in a postseason series are hungry for more.
And we know that takes a lot of time, and we appreciate you taking a little time out of yours to join us. We'll do it again soon, Bress. Thanks for joining us.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
All
Thanks
right.
so much,
Chief
Craig.
Baseball Officer Craig Breslow with us on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. We'll see you again next time.